Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another Brand Swan Live. Today, we're going to be talking about an issue I'm really excited to cover because me and Kelsey here with me, and I'm sure a bunch of you have trouble with saying no to people. Oh, you want it? I got it. I'll make that happen. It doesn't matter if I'm broke and I'm super stressed out and I'm, not making any money in my business. I will make this happen for you. So today, Morgan Doman is going to talk us through how to escape that people-pleasing mentality and how setting some boundaries and being less of a people pleaser can actually help you grow and become a better leader and entrepreneur. So without further ado, Morgan, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thanks for having me here. I'm Morgan. I'm a life and clarity coach, and I kind of specialize in people who are people pleasers. We learn this from usually a parent or some person in our life, and it comes from a good place, right? Like people pleasers. Are good people, right? They want to help, but unfortunately, it's at the cost of themselves. So we're going to be diving into that. A little bit about me. I'm from Philadelphia. That's where I work. I coach one-on-one is usually how I work. And but the reason I got into this niche is because I come from the nonprofit sector. And the nonprofit sector is filled with like so many incredible people who want to help. But often they tend to be burnt out, exhausted, emotionally drained. And that's because they are people pleasers. They are giving too much of themselves. And so that's how I got inspired to go into this. So I'll just share my screen really quick. Yeah, can everyone see? Good. All right, so are you a people pleaser? This is always the first question you want to ask yourself. And here are some of the questions that you can use to say yay or nay. So first of all, do you give away your resources without exchange? So this is like the typical, oh, sure, I'll coach you for no money, or sure, I'll do that for you for no money, or giving advice away for free. Do you cater to others even if it doesn't feel good? For example, sometimes a client will say, oh, could you just do this little thing? And in truth, you're maybe not an expert in it. You don't feel comfortable doing it. I remember with one of my clients who owns a marketing agency, she had someone who wanted her to start doing like press releases. And she was like, this is not really my thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, because you're a people pleaser, you want to do it, but it's not really right for your business and you can't really do it super well. So you can say no, right? You're allowed to say no. A big one is, do you put others' needs above your own? Do you struggle to say no? So setting boundaries. Are you confident? Most people pleasers are not confident in their decisions, and that's why they tend to cater to others. Do you allow others' opinions to kind of influence your life choices? Now, of course, when it comes to a partner or a parent or, a very good friend, maybe you want to involve them. But at the end of the day, your life choices need to be your own. And this tends to be the number one biggest way I can tell someone's a people pleaser. But is your health suffering due to your business? Are you starting to feel burnt out? People pleasers go above and beyond, and then they get completely burnt out and exhausted and tired. And we'll talk about how to combat that in the next slide. So how to start to not be a people pleaser and become a leader. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader in your sector, it doesn't really matter. The principles apply. The only difference is I find that if you're an entrepreneur, it's going to get worse faster because all the pressure is on you. It tends to get, you have to decide which way you're going to go, or you could really get burnt out quickly. So the first thing is, people pleasers across the board tend to have low self-worth. What does that mean? it means they do not feel highly of themselves. Often they're great people, they're doing amazing work, they're beloved by everybody in their life, but they themselves don't feel like they're enough. We tend to learn this through our childhood, and we kind of subconsciously think to ourselves, I'm not enough, right? And when our self-worth is low, it's really hard to set boundaries. So the first thing you always want to do is start to work on your self-worth. And this is always, always the first like 4 sessions I do with everyone that I coach with is talk about self-worth, because it's really like the basis of almost everything in life. The higher your self-worth, the more you'll be able to accomplish, because you just simply believe in yourself, right? And so it's a really, really important thing to start looking at. You can raise your self-worth by going to therapy, by getting a coach, but you can also just do it by taking care of yourself and starting to see your kind of low self-worth habits. For example, so the next thing is self-care. Self-care is like the number one greatest way to start raising your self-worth. When we start to take care of ourselves, we actually are subconsciously raising our self-worth. And it's often why people who have low self-worth don't take care of themselves. They just don't think they deserve it. And it's sad to think like that, because they're often, again, really good people. And so taking care of yourself is vital, and it includes mental health, physical health, and spiritual health, whatever that means to you. But all those factors are really, really important to taking care of yourself. And like I said in my previous slide, physical burnout usually is the first thing that goes. Our bodies tend to tell us first, "Hey, you're gonna completely burn out soon." And so we start to get sick. We start to have like no energy sometimes, and this can become a huge problem. So I always recommend you start to look at each area, mental, physical, and spiritual health, and start to say, where can I start to take care of myself? And for some people, it's simply just starting a morning or an evening routine. I like to start here because it's kind of like a very tangible, easy place to start. But if you just start every morning, for example, waking up and check in, this is totally a Matthew McConaughey quote, it's not mine, but check in with yourself before you check in with the world. So a lot of entrepreneurs have the whole thing, they like wake up, turn over, check their phone. What are their clients saying to them? This is not good. You want to check in with yourself first. You want to have that morning routine that gets you ready for your day. My morning routine started out with just simply 10 minutes of reading. And I don't know, there's something about reading for me that's always centered me. For you, it may be 10 minutes of journaling. It may be 10 minutes of meditation, or whatever it is. A lot of people like to work out, go for walks, walk their dog. Whatever it is, do something that you really love to start it off. Now, I'm a morning person, so my morning routine is really important to me, but a lot of people are evening people. And so if you are a night person, I suggest you actually start with an evening routine, because your evenings are like more important to you. And that's fine. We're all different. So you can choose and just start to center yourself in those times, and start to become self-aware during that time. And when you do that, it's really incredible how you'll start to automatically start to raise your self-worth. And as you do that, you'll be able to set boundaries. Now, boundaries are very interesting. I'm going to focus on business boundaries, because I know everyone here are entrepreneurs and leaders, but you can kind of apply, again, the principles to other parts of your life. So first of all, you need to be very clear about your own limits as an entrepreneur. What works for you and what doesn't, okay? And the way you communicate that to your clients is through their contracts and agreements, right? And it's really important you spend some serious time asking yourself, what actually works for me? I'll give you an example. I am not an evening person. I can't coach after 8 o'clock. I'm done. I'm tired. And And so I have a very clear boundary with my clients. I will not coach after 8 p.m. And don't even ask, because I will not say yes. Like, I will say no. So that's like, for me, like a very clear boundary. I also have a very clear boundary on Sundays. I will not work. I won't do an interview. I won't do anything on Sundays, because I just need at least one day to like completely recuperate. Whatever those boundaries are, whatever your limits are, they're different for everybody, right? So for some of you, it may be like, I will not start working before 10 a.m. You know, whatever it is, that's fine. You're an entrepreneur. Part of the awesomeness of being an entrepreneur is that you get to decide your own schedule most of the time. If you're a leader, though, in your industry, it still applies. What are your limits? When can you, and this is for your schedule, is a really great place to start, but also look at your energy. You know, how far is too far for a client? It's really important you know this, and you write it down, kind of have an agreement with yourself. But that being said, you really want to have clear boundaries in your contracts and your agreements. I do in mine with all my clients. Like, it's very clear when they can contact me and when they can't. And also, if it feels comfortable to do so, talk about them in your sales calls. You know, say, you know, I have these boundaries. Is that okay with you? The third thing is, this is actually where marketing comes in. Your niche and your ideal client are actually a huge boundary, right? If someone is not your ideal client, then you should not be working with them. And this is a really tough boundary to set, especially for new entrepreneurs and leaders. We're like, no, I need the money. But the truth of the matter is, if that person's going to extend your energy too far, it's not going to be good for you. So I love to use marketing techniques like that to set boundaries as well. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is how to actually talk to a client that pushes boundaries. And I like to use the policy technique. I never condone lying, because what it does is it like just lowers our vibration. Like, you don't want to ever say to a client, oh, I don't have time, right? Or I have another client at that time, even if it's not true. You always want to be very in your integrity. And one of the ways to do that is just simply say, I wish I could, but I actually have a policy. You can't argue with the policy. So it's a really nice way to say, I'm sorry, I have a policy. You can apply this to almost everything in your life. My grandmother for a very long time was on a very strict diet, because essentially her diet really impacted her health and how long she was going to be able to stay alive. And she used to say to people, no, I have a policy. Even with food, right? They would go, oh, are you sure you don't want to eat this? And she'd go, no, that's against my policy. And it's just such a great way to say no, thank you, in a really nice way. And also makes the conversation end. You know, people may just try and negotiate with you, but you can't negotiate with a policy. So that's a little technique you may want to use. Now, how to have confidence, right? To be able to do all of this, to be able to set boundaries. So it's kind of like a beautiful circle. The more self-worth you have, the more boundaries you're going to set and the more confident you're going to feel. And then it's going to be like this beautiful circle upwards. But the first thing I like to say, especially now that we're all very virtual, I like to talk about power poses and the power of music and dance. I am known for like blasting a song if I want to shake it off, you know, to raise my self-worth. So like when we start to move our bodies and listen to music we love and really be in more power poses, which is essentially sitting up straight or standing up straight, shoulders back, these types of things actually change our physical body and therefore actually start to change our emotional and mental states. It's incredible. Science has proven this. I'm not making it up. And so one of the great ways, if you're really feeling low, to raise your self-worth is to put on music, dance it out. I just think it's such a great trick. I have to share it with you guys. Like I said, connect to your highest self every single day. Meditation, yoga, connecting to your intuition, all these things, right? Taking care of yourself in general will help you raise your self-worth. Like I said, it's like a circle: self-worth, self-care, boundaries, confidence, right? And it goes around, and it's really beautiful. Like I said, raise your self-worth. The more you take care of yourself, the more your self-worth will raise, and then it'll keep going up. And self-care is actually key to confidence. Confidence, and a lot of people, when I say that, think I mean like bragging. No, I mean like that real confidence. And we know these people, right? They walk into a room, they're just confident, and we're all like, oh, we want to be them. And it's not that they're arrogant, they're confident in who they are. And that's what we're really trying to instill. And that's what I always work with myself and with my clients. Like for me, my confidence used to be horrible. It used to be really low. My self-esteem was really low. And essentially, when I started working in the nonprofit sector, I became the managing director of a very large nonprofit. It was such an honor to have that job. But what I found was, like, 6 months in as a leader, I was totally burnt out. I was burnt out because I was taking, calls at 7 a.m. when I really shouldn't have been doing that. I was staying up super late. I wasn't eating properly. And so I got burnt out. And so it's so important as a leader that you understand it is your responsibility to take care of yourself in every single domain. And that's why I like to say, like, anchor into yourself and say, what do I need? What are my limits? And you need to set them with your clients, with your coworkers, whatever it is. Of course, I always say you have to be nice about it, right? You have to be kind, but it's really, really important that you understand that the responsibility is with you. And so I like to say, anchor into yourself, start that self-worth, start to set limits, and then all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of that people pleaser behavior start to fall away, because when you have high self-worth, you are not a people pleaser. It doesn't mean you don't do kind things for people, you don't show up for people you love. It just means that you are not sacrificing yourself anymore for other people. And that's what's so, so vital and so important. And I hope I can kind of share with all of you today. I think that people pleasers are like, I always say, I'm a recovering people pleaser. And I'm always battling it. It's gotten a lot better, right? There are certain things I'm really good at, setting limits and things like that, but that takes time. So be kind to yourself. And again, giving yourself a daily moment, either a morning or evening routine, to do something to anchor into yourself will allow you to kind of like push off from there and start to leave these people pleaser ways behind you. So yeah, I wanted to just end with a journal prompt so you guys could actually go home and do something here. I love to journal. Journaling is maybe my number one way of taking care of myself. I do it every single morning. A lot of my clients do it in the evenings as well, whatever works for you. And so I love this prompt because it really gets clear on what your desire is and how you want to feel. So and when you know that really clearly, you can start to set limits that work for you. So in these 4 categories: business, money, personal, and relationships, I want you to, it's really simple, just end the sentence, my desire is, and then at the end, my frequencies are. I'll give you an example so you know what I'm talking about. So for example, in, let's say, relationships, let's say I want a hot guy, right? My desire is to attract a very conscious, handsome man who wants to create a life with me. And then my frequencies are how I want to feel. So frequencies are loved, nurtured, and loved, maybe, or no, what did I write? Well, you get the point, right? So you're just like, you're kind of saying, this is what I want, and this is how I want to feel. And then you can create limits around that and what works best for you. So for example, with that example that I just gave, one of my limits would be, I don't date men who aren't conscious, right? Who aren't trying to, and when I use that term, I mean like, it's the term kind of used for people who work on themselves, maybe spiritual guys, what I'm looking for. So I would say no to anything else. Does that make sense? You guys can let me know. I think I'm going to take questions. So if you have any questions or you want more examples, you could ask me. So yeah, if you want to contact me, Instagram is my love. So you can follow me on Instagram, DM me if you like, email, website, and you can friend me on Facebook too. I'm in the group, so I'm always available to answer questions.
So to our Facebook viewers, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and then we'll have Morgan answer them. Morgan, I'm actually going to start you off. I have a question.
Awesome.
Okay, so you talked about like identifying that you're a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
How do you identify what a boundary should be before it becomes a problem? Because I feel like I don't realize that a boundary needs to exist until someone has rampaged all over it and it's made a big mess. And I'm like, oh, that shouldn't happen again.
Yeah. Well, my first thought there is like, you don't know what you don't know. So if you do have a boundary that you didn't realize was a problem until it's been pushed, I would just look at that as like, oh, this is good information, right? However, that's the importance of really figuring out what your limits are. For example, if if your limits are like at 7 o'clock, I stop working, like as an example, you need to make sure that's clear for everybody in your life, like including your family, right? Like, because then you'll have your partner be like, yo, it's 7 o'clock, get off the computer or whatever, So it's important actually that you broadcast your limits, your boundaries to everybody. It's actually kind of a big thing. A lot of people make a big mistake is that they don't tell enough people. So that may be it too. It just like, is it communicated? Do you have like an example? Do you feel comfortable giving an example?
Oh, like, all right, how do I come up with an example that doesn't identify anyone? Well, I don't know, in like the early days when you're first getting started as a business owner, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, I'll take phone calls or I'll drive up to someone's office, no big deal. And then you get more clients and you get busy and you're like, oh, I can't just drive to your office every week. I need to charge for that time, like, like you said, I don't know if there's a way to know until you make the mistake sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point of like, make sure your contracts are super clear and make sure you understand your own limits. If you get to a point where you're like, oh, I got to renegotiate a contract, then that's what you need to do. You need to be like really upfront about it if it's possible.
So there's actually a Facebook question.
Oh, good.
Exactly about that. So Denise says, any advice for extricating yourself out of things you shouldn't have agreed to?
Yes, so backtracking. Yeah, I mean, my thing is always, first of all, how can you put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? So how would you want to hear it? Not saying you don't say it to them, but how can you say it in as kind a way as possible? I highly recommend that if you have really hard news to deliver, you write it down ahead of time. There's something about that, getting it clear about how you're going to say it and why things are important is a really a good way to do that. Just get it clear in your mind on the page. And then I always say, like, rip the Band-Aid off. Don't be, worrying about it. Just do it, whether it has to be an email or a conversation. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they just they sit in it, and it's not good. If you know you need to set a boundary, set it as quickly as you possibly can, because usually it's the wait up until you're doing that, having that conversation or writing that email that is like the stressful part. So do that. And also, if it's a professional situation and you have to set a boundary, maybe get a second opinion about how to do it. But the most important point is do it. And yeah, I think another thing that people have to remember too is like, we are really powerful beings. And if you don't, like, I see time and time again, people pleasers create problems so that they can get out of a situation instead of just like cutting the cord and setting the boundary. And so people pleasers are literally some of the most like creative people when it comes to like getting out of a situation, because they don't want to face it. And it's actually like, it can be a huge problem for some people. So, you know, rip that Band-Aid off, sit down, do it. And most importantly, standing your worth. You know, this is a great way to show the universe, yourself, like, I can do this. I deserve to be respected, or I deserve to have a limit here, whatever that is. Like, you have to kind of remind yourself of that, be kind, and just do it. Yeah. I do suggest, I will say one more thing. If it's really tough for you, do it like through an email. Sometimes face-to-face is like way harder. And sometimes you have to do things face-to-face, but if you can get away with doing it in the email in a really kind way, sometimes that is just the best way to do it, you know?
Love what you said about creating problems to get yourself out of things you shouldn't have agreed to, because I feel like I've done that. And I also, by not setting a boundary, I've created a problem where there didn't have to be one.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even just to escape. It's just that the situation was fine and no one was going to be that upset, but I didn't say no. And then I'd like delivered a half-assed job. Right. And then everyone's unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can cause a lot more mayhem than it needs to. Yeah, that's definitely for sure. Yeah. Cecilia, I think wanted to...
Yes, Morgan, I have a question. When you were describing the people's pleaser, I create a whole mural of my ideal client, my persona, right? And you were describing exactly that person. So my question for you, what perhaps is not related here, how you can break into a people's pleaser to connect with her. You know, how you can break this wall, because they have a wall around themselves, right? They create this. How you break that?
Yeah. Because so the most powerful way that I do it is through embodiment techniques that I know I learned. I help people use their body and their muscle memory to go back to when that pattern started, because people pleasing is a pattern at the end of the day. I help them go back to figure out why they started doing that. It's almost always to please a parent, almost always. Sometimes it's something else, but it's certainly, so yeah, I practice embodiment coaching. This is where I help people use their bodies to give them clues as to what happened and how those patterns started. Usually we go back to their childhood to figure that out. And for me, like, I can tell you, I know exactly where my people pleaser in me comes from. And so now I'm at a point where I'm like, remember, you're not here to please anyone. Like, I don't need to please my parents anymore, right? I'm I'm a full-grown adult. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't need to be spending my life pleasing my parents. So at the end of the day, that is usually what it is. But we have to get someone there, right? And that takes time. And to be honest with you, often it takes doing a lot of these techniques that I've been talking about first. If you just go back to when someone was a kid, it can often re-traumatize things. So it has to be done with like a little bit of nuance. So yeah. And of course, yeah, I think that's usually what I do, what my clients experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question. How do you set boundaries for yourself?
Yes, like with yourself. I am assuming this person's asking. Yeah. So one of the ways I do it is I actually block time off for myself in my calendar. It's something a lot of people forget to do, but like, if you want to do an evening routine from 9 to 9:30, that needs to be blocked, right? And of course, eventually it'll become a routine. You won't have to remember, but that's really important. Also, being kind to yourself when you don't set them. One of the big ones I find is like people there are certain people in our lives that we don't really want to be around anymore, maybe like friends and stuff. And they'll text us, they'll say, want to hang out? You say yes. And then you're like, I don't really want to do that. I actually recommend you write that person back and go, I'm sorry, I'm not available. I messed up my schedule or something. Because, you know, it's really important that you put yourself first. And when you start to do that, it's not easy, but as you start to do it more, you will really start to up level, and it'll get easier and easier. That's unfortunately the hardest part about boundary setting. Is the first boundary is always the hardest. After that, it'll get a little tiny bit easier every time.
Yeah. To add on to that question, what about like self-sabotaging habits?
Yeah.
You know, like you've got your health goals and you're like, I could follow this boundary I've set for myself, or I could just ignore it completely and go off in this other direction.
Yeah. Yeah, health is actually an interesting one too, because along with the patterns we learn, we're also dealing with like a huge amount of societal pressure to look a certain way. So, I mean, my first question is like, you know, why? Why is the health, why is that particular boundary in place? And is it really what you want? Like, for example, I am a very curvy woman. And so like most curvy women and like most women in the United States and everywhere, I spent years dieting, you know, boomerang, losing 20 pounds, gaining 30, up and down, because every time I tried to be healthy, it was really about weight, right? But the minute I said, wait, what if I stop trying to lose weight and I just start to like nourish my body, right? Then it became a different game. It wasn't about the scale. It was about, how do I feel? Do I feel good? Do I feel bad? And all of that was more just information, right? And so we take the pressure off of it. We take the kind of charge behind it off of it. And so I would say, if there's a lot of self-sabotaging, I would say, can you reframe it, right, to be something more in line with what your spirit actually wants, your soul alignment. And then of course, you know, self-sabotaging tends to be a stem of addiction. We don't think of health so much like, you know, we think of like alcohol and drug addiction separate from food issues, but they actually stem from the same place. So I would highly recommend diving into addiction a little bit. A great resource on this is Russell Brand's book. What's it called? Freedom from Our Addictions is a really good one. Of course, he's a hardcore like drug, alcohol, and sex addict. He's in recovery now, but all of those principles can be applied to health recovery. And I really like his approach because there isn't a lot of shame involved. You know, again, like I've struggled a lot with food in particular. So I always say, like, reframe it, ask yourself, you know, what do I really want out of this? Because the other thing is too, like for me, my health goals are always like, what nourishes me? And I want to enjoy my life, right? So it means that when I have the pizza tonight, because it's Friday and I'm going over to my, you know, I'm going to have a pizza, I'm okay. Because part of my goals is to enjoy my life, right? Of course, be safe, but you know what I mean? It's about, I would really suggest a reframe there. Yeah.
Good answer. I'm like frantically taking notes. I don't see any more Facebook questions, so I think we're going to go ahead and wind down.
Awesome.
Everyone watching on Facebook, I will be sharing Morgan's information that she had in her slides, so you'll be able to find her website. You'll be able to connect with her if you want to follow up. And if anybody watching wants the slides, just send me a private message with your email, and I'll make sure that you're on the follow-up chain that gets those resources.
Awesome.
So,
and if anyone has any more questions, like you're watching the replay, feel free to put it in the comments of the Facebook group and I'll definitely answer them.
Yeah, Morgan is a Facebook pro, so she's here with us. She's present.
Yeah, I love Facebook. But yeah, it's definitely like, I'm always here. Everyone's welcome to DM me if you have any more questions. And I know that sometimes these things can be private. So I always like to say my Facebook and my Instagram are always open to DMs if you'd rather communicate that way.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Morgan. This has been
Thank you so much.
amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody.